Now, our new book at bedtime. Blake Ritson reads Aunts, Aunt, Gentlemen, a classic Jeeves and Wooster story by one of the masters of comic fiction, P.G. Wodehouse, and the last to feature his legendary literary duo. In today's episode, man about town and bon vivant Bertie Wooster finds that the London high life is taking its toll, rather.
My attention was drawn to the spots on my chest when I was in my bath, singing, if I remember rightly, the Toreador song from the opera Carmen. They were pink in colour, rather like the first faint flush of dawn, and I viewed them with concern. "Jeeves," I said at the breakfast table, "I've got spots on my chest." "Indeed, sir?" "Pink." "Indeed, sir." "I don't like them. I shall place myself in the hands of a competent doctor." "A very prudent decision, sir." "My American pal, Tipton Plimsoll, recommends a medico of the name of E. Jimpson Murgatroyd. While I'm getting out of these clothes into something more spectacular, will you give him a buzz and make an appointment?" Seated in the old sports model some minutes later, and driving to keep my tryst with E. Jimpson Murgatroyd, I was feeling singularly light-hearted for a man with spots on his chest. Then I came abaft of a protest march and found myself becalmed. Whatever these bimbos were protesting about, it was obviously something they were taking to heart, rather. By the time I had got into their midst, not a few of them were saying it with bottles and brickbats, and the police seemed not to be liking it much. I hoped nobody would scratch my paint. Leading the procession, I saw with surprise, was a girl I knew. In fact, I had once asked her to marry me. Her name was Vanessa Cook, and I had met her at a cocktail party, and such was her radiant beauty that it was only a couple of minutes after I had brought her a martini that I was saying to myself, "Bertram, this is a good thing. Push it along." And in due season I suggested a merger, but apparently I was not the type, and no business resulted. Vanessa Cook was accompanied by a beefy bloke without a hat, in whom I recognised another old acquaintance, O.J. Orlo Porter to wit, who had been on the same staircase with me at Oxford. We had never really been close, he being a prominent figure at the Union, where he made fiery, far-to-the-left speeches, while I was more of the sort that is content just to exist beautifully. He was now in the employment of the London and Home Counties Insurance Company, and earned the Daily Bee by talking poor saps, I was one of them, into taking out policies for larger amounts than they would have preferred. The bottle-throwing had now reached the height of its fever, when all of a sudden the door of the car opened, and what the papers call a well-nourished body, male, leaped in and took a seat beside me. Gave me a bit of a start, I don't mind admitting, when I saw that what I had drawn was Orlo Porter. I directed his attention to the Drones Club scarf lying on the seat, at the same time handing him my hat. He put them on, and the rude disguise proved effective. Various rozzers came along, but they were looking for a man without a hat, and he was definitely hatted, so they passed us by. Of course, I was bareheaded, but one look at me was enough to tell them that this polished boulevardier could not possibly be the dubious character they were after. "Drive on, Wooster," said Orlo. "Spot of trouble?" I said. "Yes." "Often the way during these protest marches. What happened?" "I socked a cop." I could see why he was a bit emotional. Socking cops is a thing that should be done sparingly, if at all. Any particular reason?" He gnashed a tooth or two. "He was arresting the woman I love. She was heading the procession with me and shouting a good deal. He told her to stop shouting. Then he arrested her, and I socked him." "Good Lord," I said. "Is Vanessa Cook the woman you love?" "She is." Nice girl, I said, for there is never any harm in giving the old Salway. And of course, radiant beauty-wise, in the top 10. A moment later, I was regretting that I had pitched it so strong, for the effect on Orlo was most unpleasant. His eyes bulged. "You know her?" he said, and his voice was low and guttural. I saw that I would do well to watch my step. Slightly. We just met for a moment at some cocktail party or another." "That was all?" "That was all." "You're not, in any sense, intimate?" No, simply on good morning, lovely morning, is it not, terms. I had said the right thing. "You call her a nice girl. That puts in a nutshell my own opinion of her." "You're engaged, possibly?" "Yes, but we can't get married because of her father." "But surely you don't have to have her father's consent in these enlightened days." "Pah!" A look of pain came into his face, and he writhed like an electric fan. "You do if he is trustee for your money and you don't make enough at your job to marry on. My Uncle Joe left me enough to get married to 20 girls. He was Vanessa's father's partner in one of those big provision businesses, but I can't touch it because he made old Cook my trustee, and Cook refuses to part." "Why?" "He disapproves of my political views, and he considers that I have led Vanessa astray. Drop me anywhere around here," he said, closing the subject with a bang. "Thanks for the ride." "Oh, don't mention it." In spite of being held up by the protest march, I was early for my appointment, and was informed that the medicine man was with another gentleman. When the door of E. Jeeves Murgatroyd's private lair finally opened, there emerged an elderly character with one of those square, empire-building faces. Seeing me, he drank me in for a while, said, "Hello," and conceive my emotion when I recognized him as Major Plank, the explorer and rugby football aficionado, whom I had last seen at his house in Gloucestershire, when he was accusing me of trying to get £5 out of him under false pretences. A groundless charge, I need scarcely say. I sat, waiting for him to denounce me, when he spoke, to my astonishment, as if we were old buddies. "We've met before. Isn't your name Alan or Allenby or Alexander or something?" "Wooster," I said, relieved to the core. I had been anticipating a painful scene. "I could have sworn it was something beginning with Al. It's this malaria of mine, pictured up in equatorial Africa, and it affects my memory. So, Wooster, how have you been? Pretty bobbish?" "Oh, fine, thanks, except that I've got spots on my chest." "Spots? One of my native bearers got spots on his chest, and we buried him before sundown. Had to. Well, Wooster, I would ask you to lunch, but I have a train to catch. I'm off to the country." He left me, as you may imagine, in something of a twitter, nor did the first sight of E. Jeeves Murgatroyd do anything to put me at my ease. However, he turned out to be not nearly as pessimistic a God help us as he appeared to be at first sight. By the time he had weighed me and tapped me all over like a whiskered woodpecker, words of good cheer were pouring out of him like ginger beer from a bottle. "I don't think you have much to worry about," he said. "The spots will disappear in a few days. But," he added, this chipped a bit off my joie de vivre. "But what?" He was looking like a minor prophet, about to rebuke the sins of the people. "Mr. Wooster, you are a typical young man about town." "Oh, thanks," I responded, for it sounded like a compliment, and one always likes to say the civil thing. "You drink and smoke too much. You stay up too late, you don't get enough exercise. You must give up this unwholesome London life. If you do not do this, I cannot answer for the consequences. He had shaken me, but I was not dismayed. Would it be all right, I asked, if I went to stay with my aunt in Worcestershire? I see no objection, provided the conditions are right. Your life would be quiet, practically unconscious. No late hours, none. The early dinner, the restful spell with a good book, and so to bed. Then by all means, do as you suggest. Splendid. I'll ring her up right away. The aunt to whom I alluded was my good and deserving Aunt Dahlia, not to be confused with my Aunt Agatha, who eats broken bottles and is strongly suspected of turning into a werewolf at the time of the full moon. If Aunt Dahlia ever turned into a werewolf, it would be one of those jolly, breezy werewolves whom it is a pleasure to know. Then that's that, I said, all buck and joviality, and I slipped him a purse of gold and went off to phone Aunt Dahlia. "Hello, aged relative," I began. "Hello to you, you young blot on Western civilization. What's on your mind, if any? Talk quick, because I'm packing." "Oh, are you going somewhere?" "Yes, to Somerset, to stay with friends of mine, the Briscoes." "Oh, curses." "Why?" "Well, I was hoping I might come to you for a short visit." "Well, sucks to you, young Bertie, you can't." "Well, then I'll just have to take a cottage somewhere." "What is all this? Why have you got to go anywhere?" "Doctor's orders. The doc says I must leg it to the country and breathe pure air, so I shall need a cottage." "Well, I'll find you one. Jimmy Briscoe has dozens, and Maiden Eggsford, where he lives, is not far from Bridmouth-on-Sea, notorious for its invigorating air. Corpses at Bridmouth leap from their biers and dance round the maypole." "Sounds good." "Well, I'll drop you a line when I've got the cottage. You'll like Maiden Eggsford. Jimmy has a racing stable, and there's a big meeting coming on soon at Bridmouth. And now, for heaven's sake, get off the wire. I'm busy." So far, I said to myself as I put back the receiver, so gee. When I broke the news to Jeeves that our hoped-for trip to New York was off, he bore it with the easy nonchalance of a Red Indian at the stake. Not a cry escaped him, merely an "Indeed, sir." "Everybody in New York is getting mugged these days. We shall avoid that sort of thing at Maiden Eggsford." "Maiden Eggsford, sir? I know it well. An aunt of mine lives there." "Ah! An aunt of mine is going there. What a coincidence!" I spoke blithely, for this obviously made everything hotsy-totsy. "Do you remember Major Plank? The explorer bloke who accused me of trying to chisel him out of £5 when you came along and said you were Inspector Witherspoon of Scotland Yard and that I was a notorious crook known as Alpine Joe, and you took me away?" "Ah, yes, sir. I remember now." "I ran into him this morning. He remembered my face, but nothing more, except that he said he knew my name began with Al." "A most unnerving experience, sir." "Yes, it rattled me. It is a great relief to think that I shall never see him again." As I reached Journey's End at about the hour of the evening cocktail, I got my first glimpse of the rural haven which was to be the Wooster home for I don't know how long. Well, I had a sort of idea that there would be what they call subtle but well-marked differences between Maiden Eggsford and such resorts as Paris and Monte Carlo, and a glance told me I had not erred. It was one of those villages where there isn't much to do except walk down the main street and look at the Jubilee watering trough, and then walk up the main street and look at the Jubilee watering trough from the other side. The only thing wrong with the place was that it appeared to be haunted, for as I alighted from the car, I distinctly saw the phantasm of Major Plank It was coming out of the local inn, the Goose and Grasshopper. As I gazed at it, with bulging eyes, it vanished round a corner, leaving me in something of a twitter. I speedily pulled myself together and went into the cottage. Jeeves was there, and he brought me a much-needed refresher, in deference to E. Jimson Murgatroyd, a dry ginger ale. Most extraordinary thing, Jeeves. I could have sworn I saw Major Plank coming out of the pub just now. No doubt you did, sir. Major Plank is the guest of Mr. Cook of Eggsford Court. Why, you could have knocked me down with a cheese straw. You mean he's here? Yes, sir. Well, I'm not sure I like this, Jeeves. I think we might discard this ginger ale and substitute it for a dry martini. Very good, sir. Murgatroyd will never know. Precisely, sir. And so, having breathed considerable quantities of pure air and taken a couple of refreshing looks at the Jubilee watering trough, to bed early as recommended by E. Jimson. The result of this following of doctor's orders was sensational. After about 10 hours of restful sleep, I sprang from between the sheets and headed for the breakfast table like a 2-year-old. I had cleaned up the eggs and bee and was smoking a soothing cigarette when the telephone rang, and Aunt Dahlia's voice came booming over the wire. "Hello, old ancestor." You've got here, have you? The spots didn't turn out to be fatal." "They've entirely disappeared." "Well, that's good. I wouldn't have liked introducing a piebald nephew to the Briscoes. They want you to come to lunch today." "Vastly civil of them. Have you a clean collar?" "Several. With immaculate shirts attached. What time is the binge?" 1:30. "Expect me then with my hair in a braid." The invitation showed a neighbourly spirit, which I applauded, and I said as much to Jeeves. "They sound good eggs, these Briscoes." "I believe they give uniform satisfaction, sir." "Aunt Dahlia didn't say where they lived." "At Eggsford Hall, sir." "And how does one get there?" "One proceeds up the main street of the village to the high road, where one turns to the left. You cannot miss the house. It is large and stands in extensive grounds." "And you, I take it in my absence, will go and hobnob with your aunt?" "No, sir. I understand she has gone to Liverpool for her annual holiday." "Liverpool, egad. Sometimes one feels that aunts live for pleasure alone." I made an early start. Reaching the high road where Jeeves had told me to turn to the left, I thought I had better make sure. And by Jove, I found that he had goofed. I accosted a passing centenarian and asked which way I turned for Eggsford Court, and he said, to the right. It just showed how even Jeeves can be mistaken. On one point, however, he had been correct. A large house, he had said, standing in extensive grounds. I had been walking what must have been 1.5 miles and came in sight of such a residence, when there appeared from nowhere a cat. It was a cat of rather individual appearance, being black with splashes of white about the ribs and also on the tip of its nose. I chirruped and twiddled my fingers, and was proceeding to pick it up when the welkin was split by a stentorian "Hi!" Turning, I perceived a red-faced little half-portion brandishing a hunting crop. This, I took it, was the Colonel Briscoe who had asked me to lunch, and though at the moment he had the air of one who would be glad to dissect me with a blunt knife, better conditions would be bound to prevail as soon as I mentioned my name. "Wooster! Bertram!" I said, tapping my chest. He continued to effervesce, his face now a rather pretty purple. "What are you doing with that cat?" I preserved a dignified calm. "You were making away with it." I drew myself up to my full height. Heated words were on the tip of my tongue, but I kept them in status quo. After all, the man was my host. You wrong me, Colonel. I wouldn't dream such a thing. Yes, you would. And don't call me Colonel. But I didn't give up. We Woosters don't. It was awfully kind of you to ask me to lunch. I don't say he actually frothed at the mouth. Ask you to lunch? I wouldn't ask you to lunch. I think he was about to add, with a 10-foot pole, but the next moment Major Plank appeared, and the scales fell from my eyes. I had come to the wrong house. I had asked the way to Eggsford Court, and if you say court when you mean hall, there's bound to be confusion. Good Lord, I said, suffused with embarrassment. Aren't you Colonel Briscoe? He didn't deign to answer that one, and Plank started talking. Why, hello, Wooster. I didn't know you knew Cook. Do you know him? Said the purple chap, evidently stunned by the idea that I could have a respectable acquaintance. Of course I know him, though under what circumstances I've forgotten. It'll come back, but at the moment all I know is that he has changed his name. You'll join us at lunch? Said Plank. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm lunching at Eggsford Hall with the Briscoes. This caused Cook to snort visibly. Ah, I knew it. I knew you were Briscoe's hireling. What are you talking about, Cook? Asked Plank, not abreast. This man is in the pay of Briscoe, and he came here to steal my cat. Hold him there, Plank, while I go and telephone the police. And so saying, he legged it. Fortunately, Plank was in a friendly mood. I think you had better be off, Wooster. I don't say Cook will be back with a shotgun, but you never know. His advice struck me as good. I took it, particularly anxious to get together with Jeeves and hear what he had to say about the strange experience. As always, he listened attentively, and when I had finished, came as near to smiling as he ever does. That is to say, a muscle at the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, as if a mosquito had settled there momentarily. I think I can explain, sir. It seemed incredible. I felt like Dr. Watson hearing Sherlock Holmes talking about the 147 varieties of tobacco ash. Amazing. Elementary, sir. I found the habitué of the goose and grasshopper a ready source of information. It appears that bad blood exists between Mr. Cook and Colonel Briscoe. Furthermore, they are rival owners of racehorses, and in the forthcoming contest at Bridmouth-on-Sea, the race will be a duel between Colonel Briscoe's Simla and Mr. Cook's Potato Chip. But, Jeeves, what I want to know is why Cook got into such a frenzy about this cat. It seems, sir, that the cat was a stray which appeared one morning in the stable yard, and Potato Chip took an instant fancy to it. I'd have thought that a human vampire bat like Cook would have had a stray cat off the premises with a single kick. Something of that nature did occur, and the result was disastrous. Potato Chip became listless and refused his food. Then one day the cat returned, and the horse immediately recovered both vivacity and appetite. Golly! It ought to have been in a merry mood that I braked the car at the front of Eggsford Hall, but it wasn't. Colonel and Mrs. Briscoe proved genial hosts. There were also present, besides Aunt Dahlia, the Rev. Ambrose Briscoe and his daughter Angelica, a very personable wench with whom, had I not been so preoccupied, I should probably have fallen in love. And it wasn't so much as finding myself practically next door to Vanessa Cook that worried me. It would have been pretty difficult to go anywhere in England where there wasn't somebody who had turned me down at one time or another. No, it was the thought of Pop Cook and his hunting crop. The result was that I did not shine at the festive bee, something Aunt Dahlia made abundantly clear to me when the meal was over. "What's the matter? I told Jimmy and Elsa that my nephew might look like a half-witted halibut, but wait till he starts talking, I said. We'll have you in stitches. And what occurs? Quips, sallies, diverting anecdotes? No, sir. You sit there, stupefying yourself with food and scarcely a sound out of you. And the way you waded into that port. I am sorry, aged relative, but I am not myself today. I passed through a strange experience this morning. And I told her my cat cook story, and there was no mistaking her interest when I came to the part where Jeeves elucidated the mystery of the cat's importance in the scheme of things. "Do you mean to say," she yipped, "that if someone had got away with that cat, it would be all up with Potato Chip's training?" "So Jeeves informs me." When an aunt says, it means something, and I was filled with a nameless fear. The afternoon had now hotted up, and what with a substantial lunch and several beakers of port, I was practically in dreamland, so when I came on a little turning leading to a wooded country, I stopped, and it wasn't long before sleep poured over me like a healing wave. I woke to find there was something attached to my portside biceps. It was Orlo Porter. "I beg your pardon, sir, for interrupting your doze, but I am a bird watcher, and I was afraid your snoring—" He now seemed to recognize me. "Wooster, you blasted, slimy, creepy, crawling serpent. I might have expected this." "Expected what?" "That you would have followed Vanessa here, your object, to steal her from me." "I haven't followed anyone anywhere." I debated with myself whether to add old man, and decided not. "Wooster, if I catch you trying to inflict your beastly society on Vanessa, I shall have no hesitation in tearing your insides out." He started to walk away, paused, added over his shoulder the words, "With my bare hands," and was gone. The doorbell rang, and Vanessa Cook was in my midst. "I am very angry with you, Bertie," she said, "following me here. Oddly enough, although I am furious, I can't help admiring you. I am surprised to find that you have so much initiative. It makes me feel that if I had married you, I could have made something of you." I shuddered from hairdo to shoe sole. I knew what making something of me meant. "But it is quite impossible, Bertie. I love Orlo, and can love no one else." "Oh, that's all right. Entirely up to you. I met him this afternoon." "Here? In Maiden Exford? Are you being funny, Bertie?" "Well, of course I'm not being funny." "Well, strike me pink. So he has come. He has followed me." "Is he staying at the Goose and Grasshopper?" "Go there and tell him to meet me here at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon." At 5 minutes to 3 on the following afternoon, I had girded my loins and was preparing to iris out when Vanessa arrived. The sight of me appeared to displease her. "Haven't you gone yet?" I considered this a shade brusque, but responded suavely, "I'm just going." "Well, go," she said, and I went. The street outside was, as usual, offering little entertainment to the sightseer. I had a look at the Jubilee watering trough, and was walking back on the other side, when I caught sight of the shop, and remembered that it ran a small lending library. I went in. I had come away rather short on reading matter, and it never does to neglect one's intellectual side. So I was hesitating between By Order of the Tsar and The Mystery of a Hansom Cab, when the door opened to Angelica Briscoe, the personable wench I had met at lunch, the vicar's daughter, if you remember. Her behaviour on seeing me was peculiar. She suddenly became all conspiratorial, clutching my arm and lowering her voice to a sinister whisper, said, "Has he brought it yet?" I missed her drift by a wide margin. "Eh?" I said. She seemed to feel that her question had been answered. Her manner changed completely. "I see he hasn't, but of course one has to give him time for a job like that." "Like what?" "I can't explain. Here's father." And the Reverend Briscoe ambled in, his presence choking the personable wench off from further revelations. To be on the safe side, I gave Orlo and Vanessa about an hour and a half, and when I returned to the cottage, I found I had called my shots correctly. Both had legged it. I was still much perplexed by that utterance of Angelica Briscoe. Has he brought it yet? I mean to say, has who? Brought what? I called Jeeves in to see what he made of it. "I should have reached the conclusion that the lady was expecting a male acquaintance to have arrived, or to be arriving shortly, bearing some unidentified object." Exactly what I thought. In the meantime, did Miss Cook and Mr. Porter have their conference all right? "Yes, sir. They conversed for some time." In low, throbbing voices? "No, sir. The voices of both lady and gentleman became noticeably raised." "Good Lord! Did they have an argument?" "A somewhat acrimonious one, sir. Plainly audible in the kitchen where I was reading the volume of Spinoza which you so kindly gave me for Christmas. The door happened to be ajar." "So you were an ear witness?" "Throughout, sir. Tell me all, Jeeves." "Very good, sir. I must begin by explaining that Mr. Cook is a trustee for a sum of money left to Mr. Porter by his late uncle. And until Mr. Cook releases this money, Mr. Porter is in no position to marry. I gathered that his present occupation is not generously paid." "He's an insurance salesman. I took out an accident policy with him, and a life policy." "Indeed, sir. Miss Cook was urging Mr. Porter to demand an interview with her father." "In order to make him cough up?" "Precisely, sir. Be firm, I heard her say. Throw your weight about, look him in the eye, and thump the table." She specified that? "Yes, sir." To which he replied that any time he started thumping tables in the presence of Mr. Cook, you could certify him as mentally unbalanced and ship him off to the nearest home for the insane. Wow! I wouldn't have thought Porter would have shown such... What is it? Would pusillanimity be the word for which you are groping, sir? Quite possibly. What happened then? It was almost immediately after Mr. Porter's refusal to go to Mr. Cook and thump tables that Miss Cook introduced the cat into the conversation. Cat? What cat? The one you met at Exford Court, with which the horse Potato Chip formed such a durable friendship. Miss Cook was urging Mr. Porter to purloin it. Golly! I get the idea, Jeeves. Porter, in possession of the cat, would have a bargaining point with Cook when it came to discussing trust funds. Precisely, sir. So, I take it that he is now at Exford Court, putting the bite on old Cook. No, sir. His refusal to do as Miss Cook asked was unequivocal. Not in a million years was the expression he used. But that must have made Miss Cook as sore as a sunburned neck. She accused Mr. Porter of being a lily-livered poltroon. Pretty final. Yes, sir. I didn't actually heave a sigh, but I sort of half-heaved one. I would gladly have continued our conversation, but I knew Jeeves must be wanting to get back to his Spinoza, No doubt I had interrupted him, just as Spinoza was on the point of solving the mystery of the headless body on the library floor. "Right-ho, Jeeves," I said. "That'll be all for the moment." I spoke lightly, but I wasn't feeling so dashed light. Those cryptic words of Angelica Briscoe had shaken me. By speaking in riddles, A. Briscoe had given me a mystery to chew on, and that is how you get headaches. I was beginning to get one now, when my mind was taken off the throbbing which had started. The front door was thrown open, and through it came Vanessa Cook. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes glittering. "Bertie," she said. "Hello?" I said. "Bertie, I will be your wife." You would have expected this to have drawn some comment, such as, "You'll be my what?" But I remained sotto voce, my eyes bulging. "We shall have a quiet wedding, just a few people I know in London." "But I thought you were going to marry Orlo Porter." "You did you? Would any girl with an ounce of sense marry a man who refuses to do the least little thing she asks him because he is afraid of her father?" "No, I am quite content with you, Bertie. By the way, I do dislike the name Bertie. I think I shall call you Harold. You have many faults, of course. I shall be pointing some of them out when I am at leisure. For one thing, you smoke too much. Tolstoy," she said, mentioning someone I had not met, "says that just as much pleasure can be got from twirling the fingers." My impulse was to tell her Tolstoy was off his onion, but I choked down the heated words. For all I knew, the man might be a bosom pal of hers. "And that silly laugh of yours, you must correct that. If you are amused, a quiet smile is ample." She would probably have gone on, but at this moment Angelica Briscoe came bursting in. "Has he brought it yet?" she yipped. Then she saw Vanessa, added the word "golly," and disappeared like an eel into mud. Vanessa followed her with an indulgent eye. "Eccentric child," she said. I agreed, and shortly after Vanessa went off, leaving me to totter to a chair and bury my face in my hands. The next moment, my late father's sister Dahlia staggered in, pirouetted a while, cursed a bit, recovered her equilibrium, and said, "Has he brought it yet?" "Brought what?" "The cat, of course, you poor dumbbell. Cook's cat. I'm kidnapping it. Or rather, my agent is. I told him to bring it here." I was reft, as they say, of speech. If there is one thing that affects a nephew's vocal cords, it is the discovery that a loved aunt is all foggy about the difference between right and wrong. And aware that her goings-on required a bit of explanation, Aunt Dahlia started off at 75 miles per hour, thus. "I must begin by making clear to the meanest intelligence, yours, to take an instance at random, how extremely sticky my position was on coming to stay with the Briscoes. Jimmy, when inviting me to Eggsford Hall, had written in the most enthusiastic terms of his horse Simla's chances in the forthcoming race. He said it was a snip, and putting a large bet on him would be like finding money in the street, and I, poor weak woman, allowed myself to be persuaded. I wagered everything I possessed, down to my more intimate garments. It was only after I got here and canvassed local opinion that I realized that Simla was not a snip. Cook's potato chip was just as fast. In fact, the thing would probably end in a dead heat unless, get this, Bertie, unless one of the two animals blew up in its training. And then you came along with your information about Potato Chip not being able to keep his mind on the race without this cat there to egg him on. You can picture my state of mind. If it hadn't been for Angelica Briscoe, I think I would have had a nervous breakdown." "Angelica Briscoe?" I managed to say. "Yes, I found that she, too, had betted heavily on Simla. I told her about the cat, and she was enthusiastically in favour of stealing it. This is a job for Billy Graham, she said. He is the king of the local poachers, and Angelica is a great buddy of his. She told him about our anxiety, and he said he would attend to the matter immediately. I went on being appalled. Her scheme of engaging the services of a hired bravo who would probably blackmail her for the rest of her life shook me to the core. As for Angelica Briscoe, one asked oneself what clergymen's daughters were coming to. You can't do this, old blood relation. It's as bad as nobbling a horse. But you don't understand. There's small country meetings. It's not like Epsom or Ascot. A little finesse from time to time is taken for granted. It's expected of you. Entertain the cat when it arrives. Try it with a spot of milk. And with these words, she exited left centre, as full of beans as any aunt that ever stepped. Jeeves entered. He had his arms full. "We appear to have this cat, sir." "So, he brought it?" "Yes, sir. A few moments ago." "I thought I'd come and tell you," said Major Plank, "that I'm getting my memory back. Wrapped in mist at the moment, but light is beginning to seep through. It's often that way with malaria." I didn't like the sound of it at all. "What was that? I heard a cat." I heard it too, of course, but preserved my poise. "Oh, that was my man Jeeves. He imitates cats." "He does, eh?" "Oh, it gives him passing pleasure." "I had a native bearer once who could imitate the mating call of the male puma. Even female pumas were deceived. He was the one I was telling you we had to bury before sundown." "Wouldn't you swear that was a cat? That man of yours certainly makes it lifelike." "Just a knack." "A gift, I'd call it. Lucky cook isn't here. But I must be getting along. I only stopped to tell you about the remarkable improvement in my memory. It won't be long before I shall be remembering why I thought your name was something beginning with Al." No sooner had he beetled off than I was calling in Jeeves for conference. "Figure it out for yourself, Jeeves. Cook finds me up at Eggsford Court, apparently swiping the cat. Do you suppose when Plank gets back and tells him he heard someone imitating cats, chez me, he is going to believe that what Plank heard was a human voice? He will be at my door in 10 seconds flat, probably accompanied by the entire local police force." "We must return the cat, sir. Should we not place the matter in the hands of the man Graham? He is a poacher of established reputation." "Of course." And only a few minutes later, I found myself closeted with Herbert Billy Graham. I had always supposed that poachers were tough-looking eggs who wore whatever they could borrow from the nearest scarecrow. He, to the contrary, was neatly clad in form-fitting tweeds and was shaven to the bone. I have seen more raffish cabinet ministers. "Good afternoon, sir," he said. "You wish to see me?" "It's about this cat." "We delivered it according to instructions." "And now I want you to take it back." "Back, sir?" "To where you got it." "Out of the question, sir." "Why? You purloined it." "No, sir. The theft was perpetrated as a personal favour to Miss Briscoe, whom I have known from childhood. Sweet child she was. Furthermore, I have £5 on potato chip with the landlord of the Goose and Grasshopper." "Ah! I said to myself. The scales had fallen from my eyes. "How much do you want?" I said. "Sir?" "Give it a name. We won't haggle." He pursed his lips. "I'd have to make it £20. He seemed to feel he had erred on the side of moderation. "Or rather, 30. "30? Let's haggle," I said. But when I suggested 25, he shook his head regretfully. So we went on haggling, and he haggled better than me, so that eventually we settled on 35. It wasn't one of my best haggling days. As Graham and Kat set forth on their journey, the telephone rang. It was Aunt Dahlia. "Hello, fathead," she said. "What news on the Rialto?" Where?" I responded, not getting it. "The cat. Has he brought it?" "Yes." "Is it in your bosom?" "No," I said. "It is gone." "Gone? Gone where?" "Billy Graham has taken it back." "Taken it back?" "To Eggsford Court. I told him to." "You told him to?" That concluded, for a considerable space of time, my share in the duologue. "Ye gods! After all I've done for you, you miserable, ungrateful worm! All I asked of you was to give the cat a bed for a few days, and so place my financial affairs on a sound basis. What, I ask myself, has become of the old-fashioned nephew to whom his aunt's wishes were law? Old blood relation, your view of my behaviour with the cat is all cock-eyed. I would have given it bed and board, however reluctantly, had it not been for Plank." "Plank?" "Major Plank the Explorer heard the cat yowl. So now Plank goes back to Cook, tells him he heard a cat at Wooster's address, and Cook comes down here like a wolf on the fold." "I see. Good. You appear not to have been such a non-cooperative hellhound as I thought you were. Sorry I tipped you off with such vigour." "Oh, quite all right, aged relative. Tout comprendre, c'est tout pardonner." You would rather have expected that it would have been with a light heart that I returned to By Order of the Tsar, but when Jeeves came in with the materials for the pre-dinner cocktail, my heart was heavy. When I told him I was engaged to be married, he betrayed no emotion, continuing to look as if he had been stuffed by a good taxidermist. "Indeed, sir. May I offer my congratulations, sir?" "No, Jeeves, you may not. Not by a jugful. Miss Cook disapproves of a variety of things. Cocktails, for instance, will be barred, and that is not the worst." "You horrify me, sir." "She says I must give up smoking." "Give up smoking, Jeeves?" "Yes, sir. You will notice that I am shuddering." "The trouble is that she is greatly under the influence of a pal of hers called Tolstoy. You won't believe this, Jeeves, but he says that no one needs to smoke, as equal pleasure can be obtained by twirling the fingers. The man must be an ass. And I've not mentioned the principal objection to the marriage. Orlo Porter. The mere suspicion that I was inflicting my beastly society, as he put it, on Miss Cook was enough to make him tell me that he would tear out my insides with his bare hands. What'll he do when he finds I'm engaged to her?" The telephone tootled in the hall. "It was Mr. Porter, sir." "Well, what did he say?" "I found the gentleman incoherent at the outset. He gave me several messages to give to you." "Messages?" "Yes, sir, embodying what he proposed to do to you when next you met. His remarks were difficult to put into practice. His threat, for instance, to pull off your head and make you swallow it." "He said that?" "Among other things, but you need have no apprehension, sir. I have succeeded in drawing Mr. Porter's fangs." "Really? How?" by reminding him that you have taken out an accident policy with him and drawing his attention to the inevitable displeasure of his employers if through him they were mulcted in a substantial sum of money. I had little difficulty in persuading the gentleman that anything in the nature of aggressive action on his part would be a mistake.
Jeeves, your resource and ingenuity have stunned me.
Yes, sir, but it is only half a battle. I hesitate to touch on a delicate subject.
Touch on, Jeeves.
But I gathered that the idea of marriage with Miss Cook is not wholly agreeable to you, and it occurred to me that much unpleasantness would be avoided were the lady and Mr. Porter to be reconciled.
It would indeed, but the rift is serious.
Yes, because of Mr. Porter's refusal to approach her father and demand the money which the latter is holding in trust for him.
Well, according to you, he said he wouldn't approach her father in 1,000,000 years.
Indeed, but a gentleman mellowed by a good dinner is always more amenable. I started visibly.
Jeeves, I believe you've got something.
I think so, sir. He shimmered out, and as I was getting up to go and see Orlo, in came Vanessa Cook. She picked up by order of the Tsar.
Trash. It really is time you began reading something worthwhile. I don't expect you to start off with Turgenev and Dostoevsky, she said, evidently alluding to a couple of Russian exiles she had met in London who did a bit of writing on the side. But there are plenty of good books which are easier. I have brought one with me. It is a collection of whimsical essays. The Prose Ramblings of a Rhymester by Reginald Sprocket. I will leave it here. I must be off.
She opened the door, then started back with a gasping cry.
Father, he's coming up the garden path.
She bounded into the kitchen, slamming the door behind her, and if she was perturbed, I was on the perturbed side too.
Well, Mr. Wooster, as I understand you are calling yourself now, it may interest you to know that Major Plank, who had lost his memory, recovered it last night, and he told me all about you. You are a notorious crook, known to your associates as Alpine Joe, and you are now in the pay of Colonel Briscoe, who has employed you to steal my cat. Have you anything to say?
Yes, I said.
No, you haven't,
he said. I could explain everything, I said.
No, you can't, he said.
And by Jove, I suddenly realized I couldn't. Matters, therefore, seemed to be at what you might call a deadlock, when a noise like an explosion in a gasworks erupted, and I saw that he was holding the slim volume which Vanessa, the silly ass, had omitted to take off stage with her.
"This book!"
he yowled.
"My daughter has been here."
She did look in.
Ha!
I knew what that ha meant. It was short for, I shall now thrash you within an inch of your life. Fortunately, the dimensions of the sitting room did not permit of a full swing. Cook had to confine himself to chip shots, which an agile person like myself had little difficulty in eluding. And so we carried on with our rhythmic dance till my guardian angel arranged that Cook should bump into the grandfather clock and come a perler. And while he was still on the floor, I acted with the true Wooster resource, swiftly recalling Gussie Fink-Nottle, who once plucked a picture from Aunt Dahlia's wall and brought it down on Spode's head. The head came through the canvas, and Spode, momentarily bewildered at finding himself wearing a portrait round his neck like an Elizabethan ruff, gave me the opportunity of snatching a sheet from the bed and enveloping him in it, rendering him null and void. I went through a precisely similar routine now, firstly applying the picture, and then the tablecloth. After which I withdrew, and went off to the Goose and Grasshopper to see Orla. It was dark when I reached the Cook premises, which suited me, for I had dark work to do. I halted the car about halfway up the drive and took the shortcut across country. The visibility being poor, the terrain lumpy, and the cat wriggling, it was a pretty safe bet that sooner or later I would come a pearler. This I did as I approached the stables. I struck a wet patch, my feet slid from under me, the cat shot from my arms, and I found myself face down in what was unquestionably mud. I extracted myself and had rounded the house when something gleamed in front of me, and before I could stop myself, I was stepping into a swimming pool. It was with mixed emotions that I rose to the surface, and there was the agreeable thought that this would do much to reduce the bouquet I had been giving out. So I floated there like a water lily. Or perhaps it would be better to say, dead fish. Moments later, I heard the sound of galloping feet, and a human form splashed into the pool beside me. Help! I had no difficulty in recognizing the voice of Orlo Porter. Oh, hello, Porter. Can't you swim? No. Then I was about to say, but refrained and hauled him to the shallow end. What are you doing in these parts, Porter? I came to see that blasted cook. You remember your advice. Approach the old child of unmarried parents after he has had dinner. A lot of good it did me. Cook refused to part with a penny. By the way, Bertie, what are you doing here? Oh, just cooling off, Orlo. Just cooling off. I see. Well, good night. It was with water dripping from my person, but with a song in my heart, that some minutes later I climbed from the pool and started to where I had left the car. With the cat delivered, I drove back to the cottage. The song in my heart rose to fortissimo, only to die away in a gurgle as I got out of the car and something soft and furry brushed against my leg. I should have to check with Jeeves, but I think the way to describe the way I slept that night is fitfully. I turned and twisted like an adagio dancer. It was consequently in sombre mood that I went across to the Goose and Grasshopper for breakfast at 6:30. If there was one thing I had taken for granted, it was that I would be breakfasting alone. My surprise, therefore, at finding Orlo in the dining room tucking into eggs and bacon was considerable. "You're up early, Orlo?" "I don't want to keep Vanessa waiting. She's gone to get the Bentley." "The Bentley?" "My dear Bertie, we've got to elope in something." "Elope? Oh, you could knock me down with a ham sandwich. I thought you weren't on speaking terms." His response was a hyena-esque guffaw. "That's all a thing of the past. We had a complete reconciliation last night." "Oh, you met her last night?" "Shortly after I left you. I told her I had been seeing Cook and demanding my money. When she heard I had several times thumped the table, she compared me with heroes of old Greek legend to their disadvantage, and, to cut a long story short, flung herself into my arms." There came from the street a musical tooting. "There she is," he said. "Bertie, I want you to give this letter that I've written to Cook." "You want me to take it to Cook?" "What do you think I want you to do with it? Get it framed?" And so saying, he legged it like a nymph surprised while bathing. Back at the cottage, scarcely had I sat down when the door burst open and Cook was standing on the threshold, looking like the Demon King in a pantomime. With him was Major Plank. "We're in luck, Cook," Plank said.
"They haven't started yet, because if they had, the bounder wouldn't be here, would he?"
"You're right," said Cook. Then addressing me,
"Where is my daughter, you scoundrel?" "Trying to brazen it out,"
said Plank.
"Reminds me of a man I knew in East Africa. If you caught him with his fingers in the cigar box, he would say he was just tidying the cigars. Confront this blighter with the overwhelming evidence."
"I will," said Cook. "I have here a letter from my daughter. I will read it to you. Dear father, I am going away with the man I love."
"Let's see him wriggle out of that,"
said Plank. "Cook," I said, "that letter does not refer to me. The chap you're looking for is Orlo Porter. They fell for each other when she was in London."
"Orlo Porter!"
Cook thundered.
"As if any girl in her senses would love Orlo Porter." "Ridiculous," said Plank. "Vanessa would turn from him in disgust."
"Read this," I said, handing Cook Orlo's letter. His face crumpled up like a sheet of carbon paper.
"Mr. Wooster, don't call him Mr. Wooster as if he were a respectable member of society," said Plank. "He's a desperate criminal who once came within an ace of stinging me for £5.
Cook did not seem to have listened.
"Mr. Wooster, I owe you an apology."
"Oh, don't give it another thought, my dear fellow." I paused, speculating as to whether I wasn't being too patronizing, when somebody said, "Meow," and looking down, I saw that the cat had strolled in.
"Ha!"
said Cook. He seemed to have lost all interest in eloping daughters.
"I told you it must have been Alpine Joe who was the kidnapper,"
said Plank.
"And he hasn't a word to say."
He was right. I was unable to utter.
"I shall insist on an exemplary sentence. Plank, you go for a policeman, while I take the cat back to Potato Chip. Suppose, while we're both gone, he does a bunk. Let's tie him to the sofa, and better gag him."
My dear Plank, you think of everything. I was far from being in sunny mood when I heard a footstep and realized that Jeeves had returned from revelling with his recently returned aunt. "Good morning, sir," he said. He expressed no surprise at seeing me tied to a sofa with curtain cords, but assuming that I would prefer to be without them, he removed the gag and unfastened my bonds. "Perhaps some coffee, sir." "Make it strong," I said, "and when you return, I shall a tale unfold which will make you jump as if you had sat on a fretful porpentine." I was quite wrong, of course. He listened attentively, but gave no indication that he recognized that what he was listening to was front-page stuff when Plank came bounding in. Seeing Jeeves, he registered astonishment.
Inspector Witherspoon," he cried. "Amazing how you Scotland Yard fellows always get your man. I suppose you've been on Alpine Joe's trail for weeks."
"I fail to understand you," Jeeves said, his voice and manner so chilly that Plank must have been wishing he was wearing his winter woolies. "I am not Inspector Witherspoon."
"Of course you are. I remember distinctly. You arrested this man for trying to obtain £5 from me by false pretenses."
"You are mistaken in every respect," Jeeves insisted. "Mr. Wooster has ample means. I can speak with authority as to Mr. Wooster's financial standing, for I am his solicitor and prepare his annual income tax return." Plank was looking very thoughtful. no doubt wondering how he was going to explain to Cook, whom by tying people to sofas he had rendered liable for heavy damages, for assault and battery and all sorts of things. These African explorers think quick. He was out of the room in a flash. My first move after he had left us was, of course, to pay a marked tribute to Jeeves. This done, we struck the more social note. "How was your aunt, Jeeves?"
"At first, somewhat dispirited. She had lost her cat, sir."
I gasped. A sudden idea had struck me. We Woosters are like that. We are always getting struck by sudden ideas. "Jeeves, could it be? Do you think it's possible?"
"Yes, sir. She described the animal to me in minute detail, and there can be no doubt that it is the one now in residence at Eggsford Court."
"Then we've got Cook cold."
"So it would seem, sir."
We go to him and tell him he can carry on plus cat till the race is over, paying, of course, a suitable sum for your aunt. And in addition, we make it a proviso that he gives all old Porter his money. Am I right, Jeeves?
"Indubitably, sir."
And another thing. I have thought for some time that the hectic Russian swirl of life in maiden Eggsford can scarcely be what E. Jimpson Murgatroyd had in mind when he sent me to the country to get a complete rest. What I need is something quieter, more peaceful, as it might be in New York. Do you agree, Jeeves?
"Yes, sir."
It was about a week after we had fetched up in New York that I received a letter enclosing a clipping from the Bridmouth Argus entitled Jubilee Stakes Sensation. Apparently, Cook's potato chip had finished the race first, but had been disqualified, leaving Briscoe's Simler the winner. It read, "Nearing the finish, Simler took the lead when a cat suddenly ran onto the course, causing him to shy and unseat his jockey. It was discovered that the cat was the property of Mr. Cook. It was this that decided the judges, who, as we say yesterday, awarded the race to Colonel Briscoe's entrant." Dramatic, Jeeves.
"Exceedingly, sir."
"Jeeves," I said, "do you ever brood on life?"
"Occasionally, sir, when at leisure."
"What do you make of it? Pretty odd in spots, don't you think? At first sight, maiden Eggsford was as calm and quiet as you could wish, with honeysuckle-covered cottages wherever you looked. Then it tore off its whiskers and revealed itself as an inferno. To obtain calm and quiet, we had to come to New York. And I'll tell you why. There are no aunts, and in particular, we are 3,000 miles away from Mrs. Dahlia Travers. Oh, don't get me wrong, Jeeves, I love the old flesh and blood, but her moral code is lax, as in this matter of the cat. Do you know what is the trouble with aunts as a class?"
"No, sir."
They are not gentlemen.